Everyone thinks they know why Frank Fritz disappeared from American Pickers. The drama, the tabloid headlines, the supposed betrayal, it's all been dissected 1,000 times. For over a decade, fans have believed a story built on speculation and silence. But what if the truth was never told until now? Danielle Colby has finally broken her silence, and what she's revealed completely rewrites the narrative behind Frank's shocking departure. Forget what you think you know, because the real story didn't make the front page. Back in 2010, nobody could have predicted what American Pickers would become. What started as two friends from Iowa digging through barns and a tattooed woman answering phones would transform into a cultural phenomenon. Danielle wasn't initially the star, she was the backbone running the shop while Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz hit the road in their white van searching for rusty gold. The dynamic worked perfectly. Mike was the visionary with big dreams and endless energy, constantly pushing for bigger and better finds. Frank was the detail guy, the one who knew exactly how vintage toys worked and could spot a fake from across a dusty barn. And Danielle was the glue, organized, sharp, and unafraid to keep both men in check when needed. "We were like this weird little family," Danielle revealed in her recent interview. "Mike would call me all excited about some massive neon sign, and Frank would be in the background rolling his eyes, but secretly thrilled about finding some small toy nobody else would care about. I'd just laugh and tell them to hurry back so we could make room in the shop." The chemistry between them wasn't manufactured for TV, it was genuine. Viewers could feel it, which is why the show exploded in popularity. What nobody realized was how that massive success would eventually test their bond in ways none of them could have anticipated. Success came at them fast. Too fast, perhaps. After being rejected by multiple networks, History Channel took a chance on American Pickers in 2010. The first episode drew a staggering 3.1 million viewers, immediately transforming three relatively normal people into television stars. Suddenly, antique archaeology wasn't just a shop, it was a destination. Fans lined up outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of Danielle or maybe Mike and Frank if they happened to be in town. The phone never stopped ringing with potential picks and enthusiastic viewers. What had started as a fun adventure was now a full-blown business empire. Everything changed overnight, Danielle explained. "Our filming schedule got insane, like 250 days a year on the road. I could hear it in their voices when they'd call in. They were exhausted but still pushing through." The spotlight affected each of them differently. Mike embraced it fully, opening a second shop in Nashville that quickly became another hotspot. His vision for American Pickers kept expanding, and he was determined to make each episode bigger than the last. Frank, however, retreated from the glare. He remained in Illinois, keeping his picking low-key when cameras weren't rolling. He was never comfortable being recognized in public and often deflected attention whenever possible. As Danielle put it, Mike was loud, Frank was chill. That balance worked great on TV, but it created tension when the stakes got higher. Danielle cultivated her own following, with fans drawn to her distinctive tattoos, vintage burlesque dancing, and no-nonsense attitude. She navigated fame by staying authentic, but she noticed concerning changes in the dynamic between her co-stars. What viewers couldn't see was the physical battle Frank was fighting off camera. Crohn's disease had plagued him for years, but as the show's demands increased, his health began to deteriorate rapidly. The constant travel, irregular schedule, and pressure to perform were taking a brutal toll. Frank's health was the invisible villain in this story, Danielle revealed. People don't understand how debilitating Crohn's can be. He was in excruciating pain so often, but the cameras didn't show that part. By 2017, the cracks were becoming impossible to ignore. Frank was missing filming days. When he did appear, crew members would whisper to Danielle about how rough he looked. The calls between picks became shorter, with Frank often sounding exhausted or irritable. I'd ask him if he was okay, and he'd just say, "Yeah, just tired," and change the subject, Danielle remembered. Frank was private about his suffering. He didn't want people feeling sorry for him. Meanwhile, Mike was pushing forward relentlessly, his vision for the show growing more ambitious. The contrast in their approaches began creating friction. During one particularly tense moment, Frank called Danielle from a shoot, fuming about something Mike had said. "He's turning this into a circus," Frank complained. Danielle tried to mediate. "He's just excited about what we're building." Frank hung up, and that moment stuck with Danielle. The easy friendship that had defined the early years was fraying under the weight of success and suffering. Still, she kept the peace, manning the shop and maintaining the appearance that everything was fine, even as she watched her friend's health continue to decline. March 2020 marked the end of an era. Frank Fritz appeared in his final episode of American Pickers, though no one knew it at the time. There was no grand announcement, no tearful goodbye. He was simply gone. Danielle learned about it from Mike during a late-night call. "Frank's done," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. When she asked why, Mike didn't elaborate much. "He's just not coming back." The fans noticed immediately. Where was Frank? Why wasn't anyone talking about it? Had there been a massive falling out? The speculation ran wild online, with many accusing Mike of forcing Frank out to claim the spotlight for himself. Frank eventually told the Sun newspaper that he hadn't spoken to Mike in 2 years and that Mike never reached out when his back problems started. This fueled rumors of a bitter feud, with fans taking sides in a battle they didn't truly understand. Danielle stayed silent through the initial storm, focusing on keeping the shop running and deflecting questions with vague answers about Frank taking a break. She saw both sides, Mike scrambling to keep the show alive while Frank battled health issues that were far more serious than the public realized. Frank wasn't just dealing with Crohn's anymore, Danielle finally revealed. He'd been to the hospital 17 times in 2 years. Plus, he entered rehab in 2020 for alcohol issues. Pain does things to people, changes them. The Frank who used to get excited about finding an old fire extinguisher was fading away, and it was heartbreaking to watch. The truth was messier and more painful than any manufactured drama. Frank's body was failing him, making it impossible to maintain the grueling schedule required for the show. Mike was trying to save the business they'd built together while watching his friends suffer, and Danielle was caught in the middle, caring about them both but unable to bridge the growing gap. In July 2021, after months of rumors and accusations, Danielle finally spoke out. She posted a selfie with Mike on Instagram with a caption that sent shockwaves through the American Pickers fandom. "Out on the road again with my best friend and big brother whom I support fully and stand behind," she wrote, making her allegiance clear. But it was what came next that truly revealed her perspective. "I am truly saddened for the loss of Frank on the show. I have personally watched everything over the last decade. Frank caused so much pain for himself that it has been hard to watch. I truly hope Frank receives all the help he needs to become well after years of being unwell." Her words confirmed there were serious issues at play, but not the petty feud fans had imagined. This wasn't about ego or money. It was about witnessing someone she cared about spiral downward while unable to help. "The only reason I'm speaking to this right now is because everybody is speculating on my words," she explained in the post. "My words are being taken out of context in tabloid rags because they can't interview me." Danielle wasn't picking sides in a childish fight. She was acknowledging the reality that Frank's health had made his continued participation in the show impossible. She supported Mike because he was trying to keep American Pickers alive while dealing with the pain of watching his friends suffer. But she also expressed genuine concern for Frank's well-being, hoping he would get the help he needed. It was a nuanced take in a situation where everyone wanted simplistic villains and heroes, but Danielle refused to play that game. She stated her piece and then stepped back, letting fans draw their own conclusions. After Danielle's 2021 statement, things quieted down for a while. The show continued with Mike and new co-hosts, while Frank remained largely out of the public eye, focusing on his health. Danielle kept running the shop, dancing, and living her life away from the drama. Then 2022 brought devastating news. Frank had suffered a serious stroke. When Danielle heard about it from a crew member, she learned something that contradicted the narrative of a bitter feud. Mike had immediately rushed to Frank's bedside. Mike dropped everything and went to see him, Danielle revealed. He would bring little mementos from their picking days, old photos, things they'd found together. He'd sit by Frank's bed for hours. That's not something you do for someone you've abandoned or don't care about. Frank never fully recovered from the stroke, requiring extensive care afterward. And then in October 2024, the story reached its most tragic chapter when Frank passed away. Mike was there until the end, a fact that finally convinced Danielle it was time to set the record straight completely. In her recent sit-down interview, Danielle laid out the full story with no-nonsense clarity. Frank's body gave out, she stated simply. I watched it happen over the years. Crohn's, pain, everything. Mike didn't push him out. Frank had to stop. She explained that by 2018, Frank's health had declined to the point where continuing on the show was physically impossible. Mike had tried to accommodate his condition, moving shoots and waiting when possible, but Frank's suffering had become too severe. He didn't quit because he hated it, Danielle emphasized. He quit because he couldn't do it anymore. And most surprisingly to those who believed the feud narrative, she revealed how Mike had supported Frank through his final years, paying bills, bringing comfort items to the hospital, and being present when Frank died. Mike didn't talk about it much, she explained, but he didn't have to. He showed up. That says everything about their real relationship. Danielle closed her revelations with reflections on what American Pickers meant to all of them. I've known them since the start. Frank was the quiet one finding little treasures. Mike was the dreamer saving big stuff. They were awesome together. She acknowledged that fame had made things difficult. Long days, immense pressure, physical toll, but it wasn't hate that split them apart. It was the cruel reality of Frank's failing health. People wanted a blowout story, yelling, backstabbing, Danielle said with a slight laugh. But it's not that exciting. Frank fought his health, not Mike. Mike fought to keep the show going, not Frank. Now, with Frank gone and the full story finally told, Danielle hopes fans will understand the human reality behind the headlines. American Pickers continues because of Mike's persistence, but Frank's contribution lives on in the show's DNA and in the memories of millions of viewers who loved watching him get excited about small, overlooked treasures. That's it, Danielle concluded simply. No big fight, just real life. I'm proud of them both. With those words, Danielle Colby finally put to rest years of speculation and rumor. The story of American Pickers isn't about betrayal or abandonment. It's about friendship enduring through success, illness, and ultimately death. It's about three ordinary people who created something extraordinary together even when life pulled them in different directions. In the end, perhaps the most valuable thing they discovered wasn't found in a dusty barn or forgotten attic. It was the connection they shared, a bond that, despite everything, never truly broke.